What if the difference was never an accident? What if the things we notice and the things we've been taught not to notice are not random, not social constructs, not coincidences, but clues? Fragments of a story so old, its pages are written in skin and bone, in muscle and blood. Look at the world, at its tapestry of human forms. The rich, deep melanin that absorbs the sun, the dense skeletal frames, the explosive athletic power, the resilience against diseases that have shaped continents. We've wrapped these traits in politics, in prejudice, in painful history. But strip all of that away, just for a moment, and ask a simpler, more profound question. What were these features for? They are not decorations. They are answers. Answers to questions posed by a land so demanding, so extreme, it forged the very essence of what it means to be human. This is not a story of separation. It is a story of origin. And it begins by understanding that Africa was not merely a cradle. It was a crucible, the most intense testing ground our species has ever known. And the people who never left it carry the evidence, not of divergence, but of deep, continuous memory. So let's think about this together. Honestly, and without fear. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? To speak openly about human difference. We've been scarred by the horrific uses of such discussions. We brace for bias, for ranking, for old poison in new bottles. But what if our retreat from curiosity has cost us a deeper truth? True understanding requires courage. The courage to look clearly at the evidence, to set aside, just for this journey, the modern narratives that flatten our past. This is not about reinforcing divides. It is about tracing origins. Science does not progress by avoiding difficult questions, but by asking them with rigor and humility. So come with me. Suspend what you think you know. Let's not start with conclusions, but with clues. Let's listen to what the body itself has been whispering across millennia. This is a shared exploration, a detective story written in DNA and fossil records. Your role is not to be a passive viewer, but an active thinker. Let's begin where all our stories begin. Close your eyes and picture East Africa 300,000 years ago. The Great Rift Valley, a colossal tear in the Earth's crust. This is not a gentle landscape. It is a drama of tectonic fury, of soaring highlands and sun-scorched savannas. The sun here is a relentless, brilliant force. Predators are not just threats. They are masterpieces of evolution, faster and stronger than you. The air hums with insects, many carrying parasites that rewrite your blood from within. Water is a treasure. Food is a moving target. This is the stage upon which Homo sapiens took its first breaths. Now consider this. Every other environment humanity later encountered, the frozen steppes of Eurasia, the dense forests of Asia, the coastal niches, was, in a profound sense, easier. Less thermally stressful, with fewer novel pathogens, with different, often slower, predators. Africa was the ultimate proving ground. Survival here demanded not just intelligence, but a body specifically fine-tuned to its extremes. This is the human crucible. And while bands of our ancestors eventually ventured out, carving new paths into Europe and Asia, those who remained stayed within the furnace. They continued to be shaped by its fire. This means the genetic lineage of many African populations is the deepest, most continuous thread connecting us to our original selves. The rest of humanity are branches, remarkable adaptations to new worlds, but branches nonetheless. The trunk, thick and ancient, remains rooted here in the crucible. This leads us to a genetic truth so staggering it shatters simplistic racial categories. All of humanity's genetic diversity, from the Inuit of the Arctic to the Aboriginal Australians, represents only a fraction of the total variation found within Africa itself. Think about that for a moment. Two populations from different parts of sub-Saharan Africa can be more genetically distinct from each other than a person from Norway is from a person from Japan. This is because of time. Deep, unfathomable time. Modern humans have existed in Africa for over 250,000 years. Our species spent nearly 2/3 of its entire history exclusively on that continent, multiplying, migrating, separating, and sometimes reuniting. Over such vast spans, mutations accumulate. Groups isolated by rivers, mountains, or deserts developed their own unique genetic signatures. This created a breathtaking tapestry of variation long before a single footstep was taken toward Sinai. The so-called races of the outside world emerged from small, subset groups that migrated out, carrying just a slice of Africa's immense genetic library. So when we look at visible differences, we are not seeing separate categories. We are seeing different chapters of the same epic, written at different times, under different pressures. We are seeing Klein's gradual gradients of adaptation, not walls. So what were these specific adaptations? Let's read the body as a text of survival. Start with the skin. Melanin is not merely pigmentation. It is a sophisticated biochemical shield. In the ultraviolet intensity of the equatorial sun, it is a vital protector of folate, a B vitamin essential for reproductive health and fetal development. It is a natural sunscreen, evolved over millennia. Then consider the skeleton. Higher average bone density and robusticity. In a land of hard travel, of potential falls, of demanding physical labor, this structural resilience meant the difference between a fracture and a minor injury, between life and death. And the muscle. A higher proportion of fast-twitch muscle fibers, capable of explosive power. This wasn't for sport. It was for the sprint away from a predator, for the sudden burst needed in hunting, for the intense, short-duration labor required to thrive. Even our cooling system tells a story. Efficient sweat glands, with less body hair, create a superior evaporative cooling mechanism, a literal life preserver under the relentless heat. These are not isolated traits. They are an integrated system, a suite of solutions engineered by natural selection to solve a specific set of African problems: extreme solar radiation, a high-intensity physical landscape, and profound thermal stress. But the most intense battles were often invisible, fought at the cellular level. The African environment hosted a formidable array of pathogens, parasites, and diseases. Malaria is perhaps the quintessential example. It has been a relentless killer for millennia. And in response, evolution arrived at a breathtaking, brutal trade-off: the sickle cell trait. A single changed letter in the genetic code that, if inherited from one parent, twists red blood cells just enough to make them inhospitable to the malaria parasite. Inherit it from both parents, and the cost is severe disease. This is evolution in its rawest form, a compromise, a balance between survival today and survival tomorrow. It is not a flaw. It is a ledger entry, proof of a past where malaria was a greater threat than the trait itself. And sickle cell is just one signature in a vast immunological archive. The immune systems of ancestral African populations became complex, vigilant, and robust, shaped by a constant dialogue with a world teeming with microbial life. These internal defenses are a hidden history, a record of survival written in antibodies and cellular receptors, of generations who faced down microscopic predators and lived to pass on their resistance. And here we must correct a monolithic view. Black Africa is a geographic and social term, not a biological one. The continent itself is a universe of variation, producing not one human type, but a spectacular array of them. The towering, slender Nilotic peoples, built for heat dissipation and covering vast distances. The rainforest-adapted pygmies, with their smaller stature, a possible adaptation to cooler forest microclimates and dense undergrowth. The Khoisan peoples of southern Africa, with their unique genetic lineages and physiognomies. The populations of the Horn of Africa, with their own distinct blend of traits. Each of these groups represents a local evolutionary conversation, a specific answer to a specific environmental question, be it desert, rainforest, highland, or coast. Africa did not produce a single human prototype. It produced a gallery of prototypes, a living museum of human possibility, all shaped by the same overarching crucible, yet refined by countless local laboratories. Evolution was working in parallel, everywhere at once. This brings us to a profound, and perhaps unsettling, question. What if the populations that remained in Africa are, in key physiological ways, closest to the original Homo sapiens form. Not primitive, but primary. The out-of-Africa migrations were experiments in radical new environments. They required rapid, dramatic adaptations. Lighter skin to synthesize vitamin D in weak sun, fat storage adaptations for cold, facial structures to warm frigid air, and different immune challenges. These were brilliant adaptations, but they were changes away from the original baseline set in Africa. So, when we look at the typical African skeleton, skin, and muscle phenotype, we may be looking at something profoundly ancestral. It is a form continuously refined for the original human niche. This flips a silent assumption. It means that instead of seeing African traits as divergent, we might see non-African traits as divergent. The baseline, the continuous thread back to our first ancestors, is held deepest within the continent. This isn't about superiority. It is about continuity. It frames Africans not as an outlier group, but as the living record, the closest contemporary echo of the first men and women who walked the Rift Valleys. Imagine what that means for our understanding of human history. The story isn't of one group leaving and progressing. It is of one group staying and preserving, while others left and transformed. And so we return to our present, to a world tangled in the painful legacy of difference. But seen through this ancestral lens, difference itself transforms. It is no longer argument for division. It is a testament to memory. The dark skin is not just skin. It is a memoir of an ancient, brilliant sun. The dense bone is a fossil of resilience held in living tissue. The disease resistance is a living history book of survival. These traits are not accidents. They are narratives. When we understand them as evolutionary responses, as honored scars from the battle to become human, racism becomes not just morally wrong, but scientifically illiterate. It is attacking someone for the story of their ancestors' survival. We all share an African origin. That is our fundamental unity. But the dazzling diversity we see, especially within Africa, is the creative flourish of evolution, the many beautiful solutions to the problem of living. We are united by our source and dignified by our unique journeys. As we now move into a globalized, climate-shifted future, the human story of adaptation is not over. New pressures will write new chapters in our collective biology. But to understand where we are going, we must first listen with humility and wonder to the deep-time stories still told in the silence of our own selves. The difference was never an accident. It was a dialogue with a fierce and beautiful earth. And in every human body, that earth left its signature.